If I want to make stuff so bad, why can't I just do it? Today on Honestly, Dear Listener, we're talking about what's stopping us from creating, how to identify the resistance, where it comes from, and what we can do about it.
And we're also talking about demons and overalls.
I guess you'd have to be there.
Well, let's go there right now.
I'm Emily Hatch.
And I'm Carrie Schaefer, and this is Honestly, Dear Listener.
Yesterday I was journaling and I'm like, God, I feel all this weird resistance. And I just had a little breakdown and it was really good.
Tell me about the resistance. Tell me about the breakdown.
Oh, I think so. I had my journal sesh, and then I started watching something with voice teachers and whatever, and I just started feeling really blue, like this physical feeling in my stomach, and I was like, and I also had I've considered starting a weight loss app and doing all this, and I just felt this weird panic despair, physically like a sensation in the center of my body, which is not a normal thing. I think I usually am like, turn it off. But
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, what is this? And this is going to sound so woo woo. I had this
I'm here for
sense.
it.
It's like I'm demon possessed by my past selves. There was this and what is your name? Like, I am your 17-year-old self. That's I watched an exorcism once and it sounded kind of like that. Anyway,
Oh,
but
gosh.
that's another story for another day. Uh, but I had this feeling that I felt a lot of resistance, and I mentioned it in the last podcast about being in New York and kind of having always wanted to be here. I think there's this weird little despair and terror that has kind of clouded some of my experience. The feeling I had, I realized was like my 17-year-old expectations. Like at that time, I graduated high school and had been writing in my yearbook like, remember me because I'm going to be famous, and I had so much hope and the arc of me as a character to 20, going through those significant hopes and dreams, like I'm going to do this thing, I'm so excited and so much hope, and then having just so much like my ex-husband was a big fat liar. I found out he was hiding all these things from me. And then the pregnancy, the everything, and then being taken away.
For all of our listeners that may not know Emily's story, you had high hopes, aspirations of performing and moving to New York after high school. You ended up getting married to somebody who had his own issues and immediately getting pregnant on your honeymoon
Mhm. At 19.
unintentionally
Yeah.
at 19. And so I think, it sounds like a lot of those dreams and those expectations that you had coming out of high school and, the excitement and the anticipation of what it feels like to graduate high school and feel like you have your whole life ahead of you. And that got deflated because now you have a marriage to somebody that is not kind and not supportive on top of having a baby that you're now responsible for.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, it was a lot, and I think I just it's like unpacking the layers of that. And I think there's this voice that's been in me that's like, I'm so scared, like we're
Mhm.
finally here, but now we're old and we're fat and no one's going to like us. And what if bad things happen and you get this taken away? And it was like, what if you fuck it up? And I was like, oh, and I just exploded. Like I
Mm.
cried like I haven't cried like that for a long time. I was like, I'm so sorry. Like I said it out loud and it was like, it's okay. This is not a story that I'm alone in. I think
Mhm.
maybe the age changed for people or it wasn't a child, it was perhaps an oppressive or abusive parent or spouse or something that at some point has stopped us, told us we couldn't do something for one reason or another in our creativity and like who we are. That's the story, and then you have to unpack all of that and what's stopping you now or slowing you down from achieving goals that you have for yourself.
Do you think that part of it is, when we think about movies that have the montage of somebody finally getting to do what they want and moving to New York or whatever it is, like training for a marathon, we see the montage and we hear the inspirational music. We see Rocky Balboa running up the steps and doing his, sucking down these raw eggs and all of that stuff. And we know that that's hard, but I think movies make us feel like it's all supposed to be a joyful, clear, unconfusing process to finally
Mhm.
get to be unleashed onto your dream when really it's very confusing.
There's no clear path. Like, I also think that that is connected to a religious background and feeling like God has a plan for your life sounds like, and I mean, you could put this on the universe has a plan for your life, like everything happens for a reason, blah, blah, blah. But that makes it feel like we're supposed to know what it is the whole time
Right.
instead of, and then just like trusting that God has a plan or the universe has a plan. But I'm more like a I wanna do something right now
Mhm.
person. So I need a to know the plan instead of just like live the plan, you know?
Mm, mhm.
So, yeah, I think that attaches to it as well. There is this feeling of like, and then you do the hard stuff, and then it's the plan is revealed, and like eat the raw eggs, do the thing. How did they know all that shit? How did they like,
Right.
his coach had to know how to tell him what to do. A lot of the time in creative paths, we're just like, we spend our whole lives in the montage.
Mhm.
Ugh. And in movies and on Instagram, the montage is like a couple pictures, a few minutes, just looking back and seeing like the montage and being like, this wasn't supposed to take 20 years, you know?
Well, and if we were to put a realistic montage in a movie, it would be, like, so disjointed because usually in a montage, it's like it's, like, inspirational, upbeat music the whole time. It would be so, like, inspirational, down in the dumps, and we're up here, and now we're down here. Like, it would be like music change switch from, like, Lizzo to, like, Dashboard Confessional, back up to Beyoncé, you know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
it's just so, like, gear switchy, and I feel like we don't represent realistic montage in movies. Like, it sounds like it's a lot of gear shifting a lot.
Yeah, and I think it's because it's not romantic. Like, if I just wanted
Totally.
to watch someone live my life, I wouldn't watch this movie, like,
Uh-huh.
it's like, "This isn't interesting. Where's the part where they're okay?" Like, you know, overcoming adversity is a daily thing. That's really
Mhm.
annoying.
It is annoying. Yeah. No, for sure. It is annoying. Um, I've been dealing with that lately, and it's kind of what I wanted to talk about today is I feel like I have all these plans, right? I printed out my own planner, like I have planner pages that I made myself so that they're exactly what I want. And I get them all together in my thing and I write and everything is all planned,
Mhm.
right? And then life comes along and it's like, actually, those 2 days you were gonna spend doing this great thing for your art, now it's gonna be spent on stupid IRS crap and getting
Mhm.
your taxes together. Oh, okay. And before you know it, it's like, I feel like the month is almost over, and I have very little to show for it creatively, it feels like. And I know
Mhm.
putting together doing bookkeeping, there's a degree of creativity. Sure, absolutely. But like it's not the kind of creativity I want to be doing, you
Yeah.
know? And I have this great space that I get to work in where I get to sew in. I have a sewing table. My husband built me all this amazing stuff that
Mhm.
is like, this is gonna make this awesome. And for some reason, I feel like I have co-signed on this lie that everything has to be perfect around me before I start to make something. The conditions have to be just right. And are conditions ever just right? No, they're not. And
Mhm.
so I end up not making stuff because I'm waiting for things to be just right. So, fix me. Fix it.
Oh, okay. Yep. All right. But
I'm ready.
honestly, so I feel like this is so relatable.
Mhm.
And to be honest, I with my students, they are mostly adults and have a goal with their creative life, like their music. Um, and so many of them are like, well, I've got to get my studio set up really well before I can really dive in and do this thing. Or I've got to get more of this before I can really concentrate on this. And I think like this isn't great to hear probably, but it's just resistance. It's just your brain stopping you from doing something you care about. I dare say it could be feeling like you don't deserve to
Mm.
enjoy something.
Mhm.
Uh, so first you have to hop through a bunch of things you don't want to do so that you're
Mhm.
allowed to do the stuff that you care about.
Right.
Um, and I think sorting through like why is this coming up for me? There will always be other shit to do. Always um so I think it's not if you wait until there's nothing else to do, you will never do it. And I think sorting through some of that and maybe like, what do you think about that? I know that was kind of a heavy, like, maybe you don't feel like you deserve to be allowed to do that. I mean, that's a heavy thing to say. What do you think?
I think that that's really interesting because, uh, that does go through my mind. It not as pinpointedly as that, but I think that there's something in there that's like, I was taught my whole life, do the things first that you don't wanna do, and then do the thing that you do wanna do. And so far, and in general, that served me very well, pretty well. But in this way, it has not served me because most of the things around here are things I don't wanna do, and I'll never come to the end of that list. And having that mentality for myself, it feels so I feel so locked and so imprisoned that I don't even wanna start any of it. So, I never get to the thing that I want to do because I'm paralyzed to do the thing I don't wanna do first.
Mhm.
And
Eat the
and so
frog, as they say. Yeah.
right. And I so want a maxim that's gonna work every single time. But in this case, is not 100%. You can't use it that heavy-handedly. It has to be more nuanced than that, you know?
Yeah, and I think the schedule thing can be really helpful, and but sometimes it can be really limiting because then we feel like, well, if we don't stick to it, then we've failed, and then we might as well just like finish the thing we're doing, and then you don't get to do the last three things. I struggle all the time with trying to find the right schedule because I have this, I own a business, I work for an intensive in LA, I do like all this stuff and I try to section things out and then like writing music falls down or like practicing my own vocals falls to the wayside. What I've started doing is putting a timer on things. So maybe I do need to clean my kitchen. I'm going to spend 40 minutes doing that. And I'm just going to set my phone timer and go do that. And when it goes off, I'm going to stop where I am and do the next thing. And if I'm promising myself that I will spend time doing all these things, I will actually give myself a time. Like, and that has been helpful. And sometimes I have extra because I just decided, like, well, when I'm done when the hour is done or the 2 hours is done, my alarm goes off for my business part of things. I will do the rest tomorrow. Like, and I keep,
Oh, that's so hard.
yeah, I keep good lists of tasks and things, and it helps me feel like this is one thing that's in my journaling. I have enough time for all the things I care about.
Mhm.
Um, and that's helped me like focus. Yes, I can. I can make a little time. Maybe I can't make all the time that I want, but I can make some time for those things I care about.
I think maybe I'm categorizing creativity as frivolous and like, "Oh, that's your fun stuff. Do the not fun stuff, then do the fun stuff," instead of seeing it as, "No, this is every bit as valid and grounded and grounding as the stuff you have to do before."
Mhm.
And so give it the weight that it deserves. Let yourself do it, which is my word for this year is let.
Mm.
And because it's this idea of changing my mindset from instead of thinking, "Oh, I gotta start the engine and I have to crank the motor on and, I have to it's gonna be this whole process of gearing up to do the whole thing," assuming I already have the engine on, everything is in place, all you have to do is put the thing in drive. You
Mhm.
have to let it drive. That's a way more motivating and inspirational way to look at it than having to pump myself up, you know?
Right. Yep. And
So
you have to be in the right mindset to be good at being creative or something too. Like I think I put that pressure on myself like, well, if I'm going to write a song, I have to like prepare myself to be creative. Like, well, you could just go spend that time because it is equal parts who you are and what you need, you know?
right. Absolutely.
I think for me the timer thing helps me because it makes me realize that if I actually just start the timer, I usually get everything that I wanted to do done, and not because I'm pushing myself to rush, but because it's crippling to feel like you can't do and you have to do, and often you waste a lot of time being weird to yourself between things. So, it's not that I live my entire life on a timer, but I'll be like I'll feel that resistance start, "Well, you can't do that yet because you have to do this," and I'll be like, "Okay, well, then I'm gonna do this, but I'm only gonna do it for this much time because I have time. I have time for that thing that's important to me."
Right. Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. I think it's interesting too because once again this requires nuance, but the idea too of being respectful to my future self, which looks like clean up your area when you're done with it, take 5 minutes, like a timer, like you're saying, it's a great time to do that. Set a timer for 5 minutes. I'm gonna clean up my area because I'm going to be kind to future me, and future me doesn't have to, but prefers to work in a clean space.
Mhm.
So, yeah. So I'm gonna do that.
I think some of it too is just recognizing that this is an area where, you know, it's good to shine a light on it and be like, "Ooh, what's that? What's that thing telling me that I can't do or I'm not allowed to do or don't have permission to do?" Like just starting to think about it and notice it. It's like the little kid in, another demon. I'm just kidding. The little kid in you is like, "When can we play?" And you're like, "We have to do these things first." And then the kid's like, "But I wanna play." But then what ends up happening is the kid stops wanting to play because it keeps being told, like, you can't play, you don't deserve to play." Like, mm, that recognizing that that's, like, defeating that little person in you that's ready to, like, do something fun, you know?
Yeah. Well, and that's not this idea of I listened to, We Can Do Hard Things podcast, and on that, sister her name is Amanda, but we call her like I know her.
This is
We
not
call her
sponsored by.
sister. We're not sponsored by We Can Do Hard Things. But she was talking about how she heard someone talk about her self as a realm, and we are self-sovereign. So we are sovereigns of the realm that we've been given. It's an interesting shift from, this feeling of like, "Oh, I'm a parent and I'm whipping my kid into shape," instead of that being more like, "Okay, we have self-governance. How can we be the very best sovereign, monarch, ruler of the resources we've been given in a way that's kind and in a way that is, you know, you can keep it going." And so this idea of, if I don't allow myself to play, if it's just work, 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 citizens, and you don't get any celebration or any feast days or any of that stuff, that's not being a good sovereign of yourself. That is actually very cruel and unkind. And so being a good sovereign is to have boundaries with tasks that are not creative tasks and to
Mm,
make space for those creative tasks.
I really like that. You can't have a kingdom of all blacksmiths,
Yeah,
that are just, like, over the fire, like, "Clink, clink," all day long. Like, that doesn't that doesn't work out. That's a sad, sad kingdom.
sounds
Um,
very sweaty.
yeah, it does, and noisy.
Mhm.
I think too, like, one thing you said earlier makes no, one thing you said makes sense. No, I earlier you
Yes.
said, uh, that you regard your creativity as, like, a privilege and something you get to do almost as, like, a reward, or then you can go play. And we've talked about play before, and that's it's a necessary thing, but I think another piece of it is that your creativity is more than just like an extra thing. It is you. Like, it's part of you. It's not just like dessert. It's part of the meal. You are a creative, and you have to have that as a part of your meal. You can't just be like, "Well, I guess sometimes once in a while I'll get to have a little cheesecake," which means once in a while I'll allow myself uh to unbuckle from this thing I've shackled myself to and go do something, you know? It is part of who you are. That was a few different analogies mixed together, but I do
I'm
feel
here
that
for
they
it.
all make sense. The
Yes.
the dessert fun. Yes.
So in a way, it's like by not allowing myself to have creative times, that's not nutritious.
Because that's completely taking out a food group of who you are.
Mhm.
I think noticing, recognizing it, giving it some sort of analogy or a place in your mind that you can mull around, and then figuring out what can you do to monitor and acknowledge it in your actual day. So if the thoughts are the montage in a way, then and we're figuring out what the plot is, then we actually have to go through that every day and find out what works for us, um, to include it. And some of us do
Man,
not work well with schedules. Some of us don't work well with timers. That's okay. We have to find a way to implement that feels like it's honoring that part of ourselves. And that's the hard part.
It's hard.
It's a
Governance is
process.
hard. It is. Why is it so hard to be a human?
I always feel like once I learn a new thing like this, like tools or something, I'm like, "Okay, now I don't have that problem anymore." Like,
Uh-huh.
that's not true. Now I just have another thing that I have to kinda massage, and every day feels different. So, I don't know if you're like me with that, but it's very
Yeah.
like, "Okay, and now I know." And now I feel stupid if I don't do it right every day. Like,
And
it's a prac
perfectly.
exactly. And then it's like, "Oh, that's the whole problem," right? Like,
Right.
it's a practice, accepting different pieces of yourself, knowing today was kind of a weird day that I only did the blacksmith job. That's okay. Tomorrow's another day. So, what are some tools? Let's see. Do you feel like just acknowledging, like taking the time to acknowledge what you're feeling about it might shift you into, like, I could do that right now. Let me take some time to do that. Like, what do you think would also be helpful for you to, what do you think?
Um, I do suspect I have some ADHD happening in my older age and probably always had. Um, and I follow some people that talk about what we need, our brains need some more stimulation, I guess. And one of them is novelty. So I love novelty. I want something different. I want, something to look forward to, all the stuff. So even working in a different spot that day is helpful, because it's new, it's different. Or taking my gosh, I haven't done this since before COVID, but I used to take my laptop to like a coffee shop and sit there and do my work. And
Mhm.
then and that was nice too because if I made a mess on the table, I had to clean it up because I don't live there. And so that was really helpful. And it's in some ways, well, it's wonderful working from home, but in some ways it's hard too because there isn't like a line of demarcation when you're at home. It's like,
Mhm.
"Oh, I'm gonna do work stuff. I'm also gonna, put another load of laundry in." You don't have that when you go to a job. You're just doing jobby things at your job. And
Mhm.
so having those lines of demarcation really help, like the timer. Okay, now we're transitioning from this to this. It is a line in time.
Mhm.
So that's really helpful.
I love that going to a place like I think that's a really good tool for people who, depending on what you're doing, for your creativity or, but like separating locations, I've been really needing to do that because I feel the same. It's like, cool, I'm just still in this room. Now I'm supposed to change my mind about what I'm doing. I went to a practice space a couple days ago because in New York you can't make as much noise, which is really hard. Actually, I feel like
That
guilty
would be
making
hard.
noise, and I sing, and my husband's a drummer, so we like are noisy people. So we booked a practice space to go, and it's not that expensive. And some places are like 10 to 15 bucks an hour. Just booking that time, I was like, I'm just going to go sing some songs and in a different place.
Yeah.
It was super helpful. So that change of space is great.
I think this could work with people who don't struggle with ADHD, but ADHD brains, uh, they say when you struggle with motivation, you can use the acronym INCUP, INCUP. So, and in the way you can kind of biohack something. So if I really don't want to do something, I just change one of these five things. So the first one is interest. Am I interested in the thing? How can I up my interest in the thing? Second one is novelty, which we talked about, changing a location. C is challenge. So, how can I make this into a challenge? Or how can I gamify this? Or how can I, um, even a challenge or a game between two people? Urgency. So, that's a lot of times, we think of procrastination as this terrible thing, but I think for some brains, we almost need that sense of urgency that procrastination gives us to get not only things done, but to do them well. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. Yeah. And then passion. So am I passionate about the thing? Or how can I infuse this task with something that I am passionate about.
I love that.
So yeah, so those in cup has really, really helped me.
Well, that's great advice. No matter, I mean, for creative people in general, I feel
Yes.
like, not to minimize in any way ADHD, but I think a lot of us
Mhm.
struggle with similar things and procrastinating and doing all that. And these are great tools, not only for people with ADHD, but just human beings in general,
Absolutely.
especially who are trying to do many things at the same time.
Mhm. And if you're interested in understanding and learning more about InCup, I'll definitely we'll put something in the show notes, about it so that you can do your own research,
I love
because I
that.
think it's really helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing.
You know how sometimes it takes some time to marinate on an idea before it really starts, like, landing for you and your specific set of circumstances in your life? So last week we did an episode on how the patriarchy hurts artists. And we talked about it in terms of theater and we talked about it in terms of music. And I was like, huh, I wonder how that shows up in sewing because I suspect that it does. And the more I thought about it, the more I was like, oh, so this idea of flattering. I'm a short girl, um, 5'0", and so I'm constantly looking for things that are going to make me taller and thinner and big in some areas and small in other areas. And like, we're always going for that ideal. And when we design clothing, it is always for that. Not always, but oftentimes it's with that in mind. And I started thinking about it, and I have a bunch of vintage, I'm looking up at them right now, a bunch of vintage patterns from like the 40s through the 60s. And it's these silhouettes that are very feminine, tiny little waist, like these sky high models. And I just was thinking about like, there's so many things that I see online that I love. And I'm like, oh, I could make that. Oh, I could make that. Oh, I could make that. And I find myself saying, oh, no, that's not for you. No,
Mm,
that's for somebody who has a totally different body type than yours is. Case in point, I love overalls. I've always loved overalls. All I want is an overall, even a dressy one.
mm,
Like, give me something with pants,
mhm,
and I love it, but, like, as a whole outfit. And but ordinarily, overalls are not as flattering on somebody with my stature because they tend to make you look like you're a child
mm,
still.
mm,
And yet I'm drawn to these certain things and they're just not right for my body type and blah, blah, blah. And then I was thinking about it and I was like, who cares? Do they bring me joy? Yeah. Do I wanna wear that? 100%. So what is this idea of flattering? And the more I thought about flattering,
mm,
the more I was like, who says what's flattering and what isn't? And then I was like, oh, this very hyper feminine, which that's not bad. Being
mm,
feminine isn't bad. Wanting to dress in ways that are flattering, even in a way that's traditional in the traditional sense, is not bad. But I do wonder how much of this idea of flattering comes from a patriarchal system of like, you must be pleasing to what the patriarchy deems as flattering for you.
mhm,
And that is kind of we're all trying to get our bodies to one look,
mhm,
and even, you look at and there's no shade to plastic surgery, do what's good for you, but I do feel like with plastic surgery, a lot of us are going for an ideal.
mhm,
And after a while, everyone starts looking the same
mm.
because we're all going after the ideal face and the ideal proportions and all this stuff.
Yep.
And then it got me really mad, and I was like, "I'm gonna wear overalls. I don't even care. If people think that I'm 12, okay."
Yeah. I mean, it's all about what feels good to you, like you feel good in overall.
Mhm.
So, I was just gonna say overall. Uh, but honestly,
Ew, that was
so
good.
there are studies apparently. I only know this because I watched this really weird show. on HBO, but there are a bunch of it's what is it called? Naked it's a naked show. I don't know. Basically, they're like
Oh,
oh, Naked Attraction,
Naked
that's what it is.
Attraction.
Yes,
Okay.
and so they have all these, like, studies have shown that, men prefer a woman with blah, 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 and women prefer men with blah, 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 or that so and so want their sexual partners to have blah, 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 and I think that some of it is studies of people's biological attraction to other people. Now, you don't have to care about that. So, people may say, like, well, that's because biologically, people are, you know, technically straight men are attracted to women who have this particular ratio of body. But that is not always the case, first of all. And second, some of us are not just out there trying to impress everyone with our jugs.
Mhm.
So, like, uh,
Jugs.
so, like, wear what you like. Wear
Right.
what makes you like your own jugs. And yeah, I think it's true. I think that there is this you must be attractive at all times. You must be visually pleasing at all times to what society has said is conventionally attractive. Um, and if you're not, then it's not flattering. And what are you even doing? And
Mhm.
then you're a witch. So,
Right.
yes.
There's this woman that I follow on Instagram, and her wardrobe is absolutely it is over the top. It is extreme, and she's kind of a maximal I think she describes herself as a fashion maximalist, but she's putting, like I can't even remember, like, Big Bird feet, boots with, like I mean, just, like and you can tell she is living her best life, and
That's awesome.
she's enjoying what she's doing, and she it brings her a lot of joy, you can just tell. But when I look at it, I'm like, this goes in so many ways against this idea of flattering,
Mhm.
and yet I come back to it all the time, and I'm so excited every time she posts, and I'm like, "What is she gonna put on now? What is she gonna wear? What is she" like, I'm so here for it, and I'll link her in the show notes, but, like, I just that is such an inspiration to me. Somebody that is like, "I'm gonna dress exactly the hell the way I wanna dress." And I'm sure she probably gets all these hate comments, and
Mm.
she's all, "Huh." I mean, I can't speak to how it affects her or not, but, like, she's still doing it, and
See,
I
and
love it.
that this goes back to there's, like, a time in our lives that I think a lot of people say is your 30s for people, whatever, it doesn't have to be in a certain decade, but that you start to be like, "I don't care what you want me to
Yep.
make. I don't care what you want me to look like when I make it. I don't care
Mhm.
what you think I should do, and I'm just gonna live my life. I'm not trying to attract you." Like how
Yeah.
selfish of you to think that I would need you to like what I do. That's not the point. I need me to like what I do. And so, like I said with the studies and all that stuff, it's like, well, some of us aren't trying to bag a stereotypical dude. Like, so I don't care what that doesn't mean anything to me. And I think it's the same with just creativity in general, music. People are like, "Well, you're supposed to want to be a pop person." Like, well, if you do that, no one's gonna like it. No one's gonna buy it. Like, well, I'm not looking for pop people to enjoy what I'm doing. I'm looking for me to enjoy what I'm doing and create something that maybe other people will like too,
Mhm.
you know? So I think
Absolutely.
it's great. I think it's just a sign of like coming into times of self acceptance and love and curiosity. And like, that's what we're here for, I think, as humans.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more, and that is the kind of energy that I want in my life, but I think that that's a choice. because we're bombarded all the time with other messaging,
Mhm.
and it's a choice to be like, "Nope, I'm going to do what brings me joy. I'm gonna wear what brings me joy. I'm gonna sing what brings me joy. I'm gonna make what brings me joy."
And then I'm gonna section time off in my life to be able to do that. Make
I
space,
see what you
baby.
did there.
Mhm, mhm.
I see what you did there, and I 100% agree with you. And yeah, thanks so much for talking with me today and encouraging me. And you know what? I am going to be a kinder sovereign of the
Mm,
realm,
I
as
love that.
evidenced by allowing myself to create and giving it the kind of pomp and circumstance that I would give other things that are important.
Important,
Yeah.
because it is one of those important things for sure. Well, dude, that's good. That's a great thing. It's bravery too. Identifying that piece that's trying to stop you from living your best life and saying, no, thank you. It's going to be all right.
Yep.
Go make your big bird shoes.
I'm gonna overall it up.
Yeah. And that should feel good overall. All right. It's
I
done.
think
It's done.
All right. Dear listener, thanks so much for joining us. We are so happy that you have chosen to spend some time with us, and please come back next week.
We'll see ya.